Cool, thanks. For those that don't know me, I'm Tom. I'm a writer, mostly. I write speculative fiction and fantasy stories about sky pirates and whatever. I'm also a student of game design, so it's probably unsurprising I'm going to talk to you about authors and video games. And also because it's Halloween and it's spooky outside and it's just at that time of year, I'm going to talk to you about horror. Not sort of visceral zombie type Resident Evil horror or psychological Freudian Silent Hill type horror. I'm going to talk to you about horror of H.P Lovecraft. Has anybody heard of H.P Lovecraft? Because if you all have, I can make this much shorter. I'm going to say about 50-50, that's fine. If you haven't heard of H.P Lovecraft, you might have heard of, I'm glad that works, that? Does anybody want to go at pronouncing that? Because I don't. Yeah, no, I'm glad people are doing it all wrong. That's not how you say it. It actually, because canonically, you can't pronounce that in the human tongue. Wow. That's my talk, I'm allowed to be a dick. So, okay, obviously that causes me problems, but the purpose of this talk, I'm just going to pronounce it Geoffrey. I think that's close enough. We'll go with that. But anyway, Geoffrey, and there's a little sprite of him there, popular character in horror history and has influenced quite a lot of stuff, and was created by H.P Lovecraft, who's this guy. On a personal note, I really like it when authors look like they're supposed to when you read fiction. Like if there's a guy who's going to write creepy, psychological, weird fiction, he's going to look like that. And Lovecraft's brand of horror fiction is known as cosmic horror. Focuses a lot on fear of the unknown, which it sounds like kind of comes from him as a person. He was, by all accounts, an odd guy. He was extremely racist. He was a bit of a shut-in. He kind of hated all people. He rarely went out before night and spent his days neurotically writing letters to other writers, usually about how much he hated people or other writers. And that sort of crept its way into everything he wrote. His fiction is very neurotic. It's full of abstract horror and psychological dread. That's stuff that looks like that is in it as well, which is weird, creepy looking stuff. But that's not really the point. He's had like massive influence on a variety of fiction throughout. I mean, he was writing only between the ages of 31 and 46, and he was born turn of the century 1890, and he published a huge body of work in that time, but he never achieved commercial or critical success. He wrote frequently in Weird Tales, the popular sci-fi horror magazine at the time, but he never really sold anything, and he died at the age of 41. Basically penniless, so similar to like 95% of people who write for a living. It's just what we endure. But his fiction's gone on to inspire numerous people, writers including Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman and China Miéville, all reference Lovecraft a lot. TV shows ranging from South Park to True Detective feature a lot of Lovecraft references. Musicians, including Metallica and Cradle of Filth. Film directors, including Clive Barker and John Carpenter, and of course video games. With things like XCOM, Quake, the Shin Megami Tensei series, and the Secret World multiplayer online game thing. All heavily influenced by the work of H.P Lovecraft. So, what makes his fiction, I'm not even the right slide for that, there we go, we'll look at this thing some more. The elements of his fiction that set it apart include references to elder races and terrible beings from before the dawn of man. There's a lot of dream-based fiction. He was very interested in the crossover between reality and the dream, the horrors that live inside our minds and the horrors that live in the deep reaches of the galaxy. The idea of dream and reality merging is a really Lovecraftian theme. And that sort of stuff's really difficult to translate into video games. It's a bit easier to translate into role-playing games. The popular Call of Geoffrey role-playing game is now in its 7th edition, and it's played frequently. And the ambiguity of having a games master able to sort of control what the players know, and that game's focus on using, like, controlling sanity. Your character's sanity is a statistic in the game. And loss of sanity and humanity is a major theme of Lovecraftian fiction. Lovecraftian protagonists are always people seeking to understand this ancient eldritch lore and eventually going mad, because it's beyond our mind's comprehension. But that stuff's difficult to convert into a video game. Video games are very good at visual, audio, visceral stuff, and that's not really the point of Lovecraft's horror. Lovecraft's horror is psychological and supernatural and bigger than us. You can't really do it in a shooting game or a combat game, generally, because it's not that sort of thing. This is a screenshot from 2005's Call of Geoffrey, Dark Corners of the Earth by Head. I will stop doing the Geoffrey joke eventually. It doesn't feature in the second half of the talk. I feel it's, I'm bored of it, you guys must be bored of it. But anyway, this screenshot for me represents how you don't do Lovecraftian horror in a video game. At no point should you be gunning down one of the elder gods from the deck of a ship with what looks like a Tommy gun. The creatures of Lovecraft are supposed to be, they're effectively gods. To even conceive of them is enough to drive a man mad. So you certainly can't kill one with an Uzi or whatever. Which presents a problem for games designers, because games designers, a lot of them are fascinated with Lovecraftian horror, but it's hard to translate into a video game. So I want to talk about a game designer who I think does a good job of converting or bringing Lovecraftian elements into his game design. This is Hidetaka Miyazaki. He's the president of From Software and the developer of video games like Demon's Souls, Dark Souls and Bloodborne. If you don't know Dark Souls, that's the one that people who really like video games will fist bump and talk about how difficult and also excellent it was at great length. And really I shouldn't be allowed a microphone whilst talking about Dark Souls, so I'm going to skim over that, but it's good and I like it. That's not really the thrust of this. The thrust of this is Miyazaki and his unique approach to designing video games. Now, a lot of his video games contain direct Lovecraft references. The entire second half of Bloodborne, his most recent game, is an ode to Lovecraft. The city of Yharnam, where you play the game, is like the worst nightmare of a Lovecraftian protagonist. It's as if an elder god worshipping cult has somehow become the dominant religion of an entire city, giving rise to things that look like this, which you don't want to meet in a dark night. But Miyazaki's approach to video game fiction is quite different from your standard approach, and a lot of that comes from his upbringing. Miyazaki was born into a poor family, and he read voraciously, but his family couldn't afford the manga novels that were traditionally read by Japanese children at the time. So he used to hang out in the library reading bits and pieces of Western novels, including the works of H.P. Lovecraft. But he wasn't brilliant in English, so he didn't understand the entire novel, which meant he had to kind of make half of it up and piece the whole thing together in his head as he was going along. And this made it feel interactive to him. He was sort of having to piece the story together from the elements he could understand. And he wanted to translate this this element of confusion almost into how he designs his games. And this rings true with a lot of Lovecraftian themes. Players in a Souls game, or Bloodborne, which is confusingly titled because I can't refer to them as Souls games anymore, but I'm still gonna. The players in these games progress like Lovecraftian protagonists, trying to uncover the dark truth of the world you're presented, coming up against beasties, and eventually going mad, becoming hollow, or however he chooses to represent the descent into madness in these games. There's frequent use of dream worlds. His worlds are always set against the background of ancient civilizations, of greater past races, much like Lovecraft's. And time and space are also fluid, which is another familiar Lovecraftian trope. Another thing that makes Miyazaki's game fiction similar to Lovecraft's fiction are the persistent themes of sanity and madness. Lovecraftian heroes, or, well, protagonists, they're never heroes, are always seeking to uncover truth and slowly going mad. And in a Souls game, everybody goes mad. They're either mad when you meet them, or even the ones that seem sane at the start, like the guy who's helped you out and sits next to a bonfire, ends up going insane and attacking you towards the end of the game. I don't think there's a single character in the entire franchise who doesn't end up becoming insane before the game's end. And this often includes the player. The fragility of sanity and humanity are written into Miyazaki's game systems. Every game contains a system that tracks either the player's sanity or their descent into darkness. Demon Souls has player tendency that changes from light to dark as you progress. The more you die, the darker your soul becomes. In Demon Souls, the player has humanity, which they gain through killing other humans and lose the more they die, representing them transforming into a hollow, effectively a non-person. And in Bloodborne you collect insight, which is left over in the minds of people who were exposed to that game's eldritch truth. Gaining insight makes you more powerful as a player, but it also makes you susceptible to madness, letting enemies later in the game drive you mad and kill you, much like being exposed to any of the Elder Gods, or even their literature does, to a Lovecraftian protagonist in his fiction. And these systems directly affect the player's ability to progress in the games. Usually these are tied to how people interact with other players. So your sanity directly affects your ability to play with others and progress in the game. And this is where I think Miyazaki really succeeds in integrating elements of Lovecraftian fiction into the design of his games, where other games that maybe take a model of an elder god and have you shoot it with the machine gun perhaps don't. Ideas of sanity and madness and eldritch truth and ancient power are written into Miyazaki's games as deeply as they are in Lovecraftian lore. And I think this is a very interesting approach in how you turn what is effectively an action RPG, which you wouldn't take as, it's not your standard genre for psychological horror by any means, and turning that into a genuinely horrifying Lovecraftian experience. And this isn't something I've really seen replicated in any other video games. Obviously, Dark Souls made lots and lots of money, so lots of people are now imitating that sort of design. So maybe we're going to see more opaque and interesting game design stuff. But I would recommend finding one and playing it. If you've not played Dark Souls, play Dark Souls, it's good. If you can find Bloodborne, play that, it's good. Jake doesn't like it, but I've got the microphone now, so it's good, play it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend reading Lovecraft. His stuff is difficult, it's often troubling, and it can be hard to get into. If you want to get into it, read To the Mountains of Madness, because that's great, and I think reasonably non-racist as far as his work goes. It's one of the better ones. If you're interested, read that one. And look up Miyazaki and play his games, and next year we get Dark Souls 3. So woo! And that is about it. Hope that was fun for everybody. Try not to get eaten by some sort of eldritch beast on the way home. The moon is looking very dodgy tonight. If anyone gets that Bloodborne reference, we should probably all stay inside. Thank you.